right, one fish. Another fish right on the bottom. All right, so this is exactly what we are looking for. Kind of coming up on the rocks here. I'll go ahead and screenshot it for you guys. And this right here is really what we're looking for, ideally. I'll go ahead and do another screenshot because they're way up high. This looks promising. This looks very promising. Still going through them. We'll take a screenshot of that. We'll take a screenshot on side imaging so you guys can kind of see how discreet this spot is. Alright, spot locked. What's going on, guys? Today we're out here, one of my favorite lakes in the Hayward area. We're doing some walleye fishing. And we're going to be using one of my favorite lures when walleye fishing, which was the Acme Hyper Rattle Purple. It's been catching a ton of fish. We had a good day today catching them on them. A little bit tougher bite. A lot of fish don't want to eat, but this has definitely been the bait that's been getting it done. We got a good stack behind us. We'll see what happens. And fish on, right away, right on cue, on the Hyper Rattle. That is the best part about these baits, is just how quickly you can expect to catch them after you see them. Not a giant, he's already off the net, just like many of them do. All right, so when do you cast this bait versus when do you go vertical with this bait? You know, it's all about how the fish are set up. You wouldn't troll for fish if they're all right here, right? Well, you also wouldn't cast this bait a mile if all the fish were in one little pod right below the boat. So it's the same thing. So if we're cruising around a spot, you know, you have to find the fish first, like any other walleye technique, really, besides trolling, before you start doing this. So basically what I like to do, I'm starting to drive around a whole bunch of these humps or points or you know, flats or anything like that, and I'm looking for fish. Now, if I see a spot that looks like this right here, where I have multiple pods of fish working basically this same hump, something that looks like this, that means I'm gonna cast this spot. You know, it's kind of on a bigger flat area. You can see it's all relatively the same depth, and there's fish kind of roaming the top of this reef. So this is definitely a casting situation. Typically what I'll do, I'll mark out those pods or drive over it a couple times and mark out that, you know, where those pods are, because a lot of times when you see walleyes like this, they keep moving around. So don't be afraid to mark those same pods of fish multiple times. You know, crisscross that reef. Maybe once they're here, then they're over here, and there's, you know, you kind of get a map of basically how those fish travel throughout that spot. Now, the next thing you're going to do is spot lock upwind. You definitely want to do this technique casting backwards, because if you're trying to do it casting forwards, a lot of times when you snap your rod and drop your rod like that, the line's going to get wrapped around the tip of your rod, and that just sucks. So make sure you're casting backwards with the wind, pretty much like any other technique you would use. Fish on. It feels like a decent one. Just felt that one ripped up, hit bottom, and as many as them do, just trapped it right to bottom. Nice walleye. Look at that thing. Oh yeah. That is what we're talking about. And that is the power of these absolute speed jig baits. We'll give you guys a look. This is a good one. There we go. Stud of a Northwoods, Hayward, Wisconsin walleye. We'll take them all night long like that. That one absolutely smoked it. It is a small bait, but that thing catches a absolute pile of walleyes. We're gonna go ahead and let that one go and talk a little bit about basically the two different ways you fish this bait and when you would do one or the other. All right, so how do you fish this lure? Like I said, this is the Acme Hyper Rattle. This is the big one. It's 28 grams. It's a very heavy bait. It's heavier than the standard jigging wrap, so it gets down much quicker. You can essentially just fish a lot faster with this than you could a jigging wrap. It's heavy. Like I said, it's got a couple of different tie points. I don't think that's super important which one you tie to. It's got a little bit different bottom hook design. Kind of lets that thing swing a little bit more to keep a few more fish on. Hooks are razor sharp. This bait is absolutely indestructible. You know, one problem we've had with this kind of category baits is the tail's falling off. These things are virtually indestructible. I don't know if they're glued on or molded on or what they are, but I've never had one fall apart yet. So how do you work these baits, right? That is the important part. So I always fish this on a medium light action rod. You want something that has a lot of play in the tip, because when you're snapping this bait, you're not going to feel a bite. It's not like a jig where you get a bite set and you keep the fish glued. This, most of the time you will not feel a bite. They trap it right to the bottom of the lake. So first of all, when I'm casting this bait, what I'm doing, both the way you fish it vertically and cast it is the same, but when I'm casting this bait, I'm not making an insane bomb cast. Try to refrain from doing that. These baits are extremely heavy and you could cast them a mile if you wanted to, but basically what I'm doing, I'm casting out there, and once I'm on bottom, the important part is to tighten up, and don't get tight like right here, get tight right here. You want to hit this bait on a slack line. This is not a pull. It's kind of like doing a jerk bait for bass fishing. You want to hit the bait on a slack line. So bait's on the bottom, I'm gonna get tight right there, and drop my rod. I'm going to do a couple of pops, then I'm going to wait till it hits bottom. And the important thing to note is that I'm not feathering that bait down. I want that bait falling on a slack line. It doesn't matter too much if you do 2 pops or just 1 pop. 2 pops gets it off the bottom a little more, so a lot of times in the first part of my cast or when I'm still way out there, I'll do 2 pops to kind of get that bait up a little bit more. You can imagine that bait going like this if you're making a farther cast, moving more just kind of along the bottom than getting it up. So if it's way out there, I'm just doing 1 pop, it kind of will just go right along the bottom. So that 2 pops gets it up a little bit more, gives it a little bit of hang time. And then once I start getting closer to the boat, I'll kind of mix in some 1 pops, 2 pops. Doesn't really matter a whole lot. You just want to be able to lift that bait off bottom. And this is the amount of time it takes that bait to pop up and hit bottom. You can see it's an extremely fast way to fish. It's 100% a reaction bite. There's not a whole lot of other baits you can fish in this 30-foot zone. 25, 30-foot zone this fast. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm hitting that bait on a slack. One thing guys like to do a lot is they're used to normal jig fishing where you pop a jig up and you just let it down with the rod so you can feel the bite. You're not trying to do that with this bait, so I'll do it again here. You're casting the bait out. You're getting all the way down to bottom. And once you're on the bottom, that big pop, and you kind of just drop your rod a little bit. It's all right if you still got that bow in the line. You don't have to kind of overdo it and just go like that. But you want that bait falling totally free falling, extremely fast, right? The bad thing to do would be something like this here. Follow that bait down and keep a tight line on the fall. That's the #1 reason guys probably catch less fish compared to other guys, is guys want to feather that bait down the whole way. And like I said, all your bites, or 90% of your bites, you're just gonna go to pop up again and you're gonna feel weight and you just crank on that fish. Now, these baits just have a reputation for not hooking fish very well, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the fish just trap it on the bottom. They're almost snapping at it, lunging at it, pinning it to the bottom of the lake. So a lot of times when you're setting, those hooks are on the outside of the fish's mouth. These hooks are razor sharp and really strong, but a lot of times they get hooked somewhere on the outside of the mouth. So when you're fighting a fish, you don't want to kind of dilly-dally and take your time and just play the fish out. Basically, you want to have a rod like this with a somewhat loose drag. If you're going to fish braid, you definitely want a looser drag, and you want to put quite a bit of pressure on that fish. Load that rod up, and don't give him any slack on the line to basically get off. So when you're fishing this bait vertically, it's a lot of the same. You're going to drop down. This way I like to do more single pops overall. Once I'm on the bottom, basically what I'm going to do is pop up, drop the rod. Pop up, drop the rod. You can see it's still real snappy. That bait's still darting around a lot, but I'm making sure that I'm dropping my rod. I see guys want to go too tight of a line this way, probably more than casted, because it's a little bit easier to go a tight line when you're doing this. I see guys want to kind of do this thing right here. That is bad. That will be less bites. You want to pop that thing up, drop your rod. You want to wash the slack till you're on bottom to let you know when you rip it again. And that is basically the cadence I'll do 99% of the time when I'm going straight vertical like this. So as far as rods, reels, St. Croix medium light, 610 extra fast is the rod I use. You guys have heard me talk about this rod a ton, but it's got a very soft tip to it. You can put a lot of load in that rod deep into the rod, even though it's fast action. That medium light has that much softer tip, with plenty of backbone on a big fish. If you try to do this with too soft of a rod, you're not going to be able to end up getting the action you need out of the bait, and it's going to be hard to get that bait to really snap hard. So reels, I pretty much run 1 to 2 reels. This is the Piscifun Honor XT. The website's down below. You guys should absolutely check out this reel company. The other one, which I use a ton, is the Carbon X 2000. Both phenomenal reels. You can fish these baits on just any kind of, 10-pound braids that I run on pretty much everything, and it works fine for doing this. So that's the cadence I use. It's extremely effective, an extremely fast way to get walleyes. If you haven't tried it, get out, play around with it, because it pretty much works everywhere walleyes live. On. See him on the graph, shoot right down to him, and catch a fish. Not a big one there, but it proves that point nicely, just how quick it is when you're sharp shooting them off the graph like that. That is the absolute quickest way to catch them. I'd say I do both about 50-50. Maybe err a little bit more on the side of going vertical most of the time, but they're excellent casted lure too. This whole category of baits has just absolutely changed walleye fishing. It's an incredibly aggressive way to fish. It's incredibly quick, and it's an extremely powerful tool. Really, anytime the fish start getting deeper than about 10-15 feet of water, this becomes an absolute player. So thanks for watching, guys. I always have fun making these short informational pieces out here on the water, and I gotta get off and do a whole bunch of editing and be back on the water tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe, please keep watching the channel, and thanks for watching.